So here's the question for the day. So, what makes bad so bad? What makes doing wrong things so wrong? What makes sin so bad? So, the answer to that question comes in if you think about how God designed us, how God designed humanity. So, we can understand that our bodies have constraints, right? You can't get in too cold, sustain that cold, or what happens? You can damage your body or even die, right? What happens if you get it too hot? You get it, intense heat or duration of intense heat. What happens? Well, again, you can damage it or die. What happens if the body has all kinds of parameters, so you can't jump off of a height too high. If you do, gravity will draw you to the ground. You can hurt yourself depending on how high you are. You can either damage again or die, right? You got to have water within a certain amount of time, days. You have to have air. You can't ingest poisons, things like that. So there's a lot of constraints around this physical body. Same thing applies to the soul. And we know this to be true. Like a soldier when he goes into battle, depending on the trauma and the frequency of the trauma, he can sustain PTSD, and sometimes that PTSD is unrecoverable, that they continue in that devastated state. And same thing goes with those who've been molested or attacked or things like that. Those PTSD things, those things that affect the soul, can damage that soul. So just like the body can be damaged or die, the similar thing is for the soul. You say, okay, well, I understand the damage part, but what's the equivalent part of the death part for the soul? Well, the Bible calls it this word called reprobate. It's this Greek word adokimos, where it's a castaway, it's a reject, and it's the reason why God destroyed the ancient world. In Genesis chapter 6, verse 5, he looked upon the wickedness, looked upon the wickedness of man upon the earth, and saw that it was great, and that every thought of the imaginations of his heart were only wicked, continuously. So that's the equivalent death, that this soul becomes reprobate, reject, a castaway. So these parameters that we have of the soul require that we operate within them. That's why sin is so bad. That's why doing bad things are so bad. It's not because God's a control freak, or because he's an ogre, or because he wants to spoil your fun, but because God made us in his image and in his likeness, and he's the designer. So when we operate outside our design parameters, we can damage or die, or in this case, corrupt ourselves and become reprobate. So today, just wanted to encourage you that, operating within God's design is not just something that we do, and it wasn't God's intention to spoil our fun or ruin some sort of freedoms that we may have. He's doing it so that you can operate freely within that realm, so that these things don't destroy you. We have natural desires that God placed within us. Desire for food and clothes and keeping yourself warm, things like that. We have what they call natural lusts. These are lusts of the flesh, things pleasurable, lusts of the eyes, things beautiful, and pride of life, to have value, have meaning. But when these drives get pushed from the background, to the foreground, where they were a tool, they were something that was just a background drive to be under control of your mind, your prefrontal cortex, your thinking. And now they're pushed to the foreground, where they are now the goal. They are the objective. They are the thing that we strive for, we live for. Then they become distorted. They become out of proportion. They become perverted and twisted. And now they're at a place where they don't belong. And we become addicted. We become one-minded. So it's like having a corruption within your ship. I've heard it said that's like being on a wooden ship at sea and having termites in that ship. Eventually it'll eat itself. So the idea here is that God has given us these constraints, if you will, or righteous living, that we would truly be free of the things which damage the soul and inevitably the body as well. So much more on this later, but this kind of part one, wanted to encourage you with that, and I hope you're all well and wish all the best in God's goodwill for you, and have a great day. God bless.